Yeah, I mean the main part of the exhibition is a series of masks. One mask is actually a hat, but they've been made in Japan by a master no mask maker, and the work presents a kind of scenario in a way for the performance of a play, and the play, which may or may not be performed in the end, is a 16th century no play that tells the story of a young noble boy whose father is defeated by a rival clan and is sent into exile. And at the beginning of the play, he escapes exile and tries to escape east to make a new life for himself. And to disguise himself, he goes to a hat maker who designs a very encoded kind of a boshi ori hat, which is actually the name of the play. And what I'm proposing is that play is then performed by a kind of group of historical and fictional characters that I've kind of pieced together. This is a sort of Cold War cast of characters, all of which have their own kind of sort of double identities in a way, and they're telling a rather different story, a story that's connected, which is a story about a sculpture, which has a double life, a bit like the young noble boy trying to sort of make a new life for himself. And the sculpture was by Henry Moore. Yeah, the sort of, in a way, the central character of the sort of the Cold War drama is a sculpture that was originally designed in 1963 as a small maquette in Henry Moore's maquette studio in Perry Green, and then it was proposed to a commission from the Chicago University, who were looking for a sculpture to mark the site of the first nuclear reactor, which was built by Enrico Fermi, the Italian physicist, in 1943, and was the beginning of what became the Manhattan Project, the atom bomb project. And Moore proposed this small maquette, and they were kind of interested in it. It seems that originally it had actually, ironically, it had a link to a poster from the same year, 1963, designed by Henrion, a famous graphic designer, an emigre graphic designer, for CND, for the campaign for nuclear disarmament, and which was a famous image of a skull with a mushroom cloud superimposed on it. And the little sculpture, the little maquette, has this sort of domed form like a skull, and then these three, a sort of tripod which it sits on, which of course also relates closely to the CND logo. And following the commission from Chicago, Moore sort of distanced himself from that sort of that reading of the work, and actually made a sort of fictional set of images of him working on the maquette long after it was finished, next to an elephant skull, which also has a similar kinds of forms in it, but very much sort of fictionalizing its kind of origins in a way. So I also discovered that the one of the things that happened during the process of making the large monument in Chicago, Moore made a smaller work, which was a sort of working model for the nuclear energy sculpture in Chicago, which he later sold one of the edition to the museum in Hiroshima, where of course it has a very different kind of sense and significance. And that sort of story of this sculpture, which kind of reinvents itself in two different locations.
1945, Anthony Blunt was appointed surveyor of the King's Pictures, and 2 years later became professor of art history at the University. During World War II, Moore became an official war artist, making drawings during the Blitz of
I'm nervous when I went to meet him, Yasuo Michi, he's called, the mask maker. And he works in a very modest apartment building in the middle of a rather built-up part of Osaka, and it really wasn't what I expected at all. And he engaged with the project in a fantastic way and sort of brought so much to it. The mask maker only uses materials that were available in the 15th and 16th century. So his job in a way these days is more of what we would consider a kind of forger. He's making extremely accurate copies of historical masks for particular contemporary actors, and they want the signs of aging. They want the sort of patina of time on the mask. So he brings all of this extraordinary sort of technique to the making of this set of masks for me.
See echoes of that.
No, but actually it's interesting. This work in a way evolved out of a project like that, where this kind of the first time I used a Henry Moore sculpture as a sort of starting point for a work was in Toronto. I was asked to make a show in the power plant, which is a space overlooking Lake Ontario, and I'd sort of heard, because of my interest in sort of alien species, and I worked a lot with rhododendrons in Scotland, and I'd heard about the zebra mussel, which has kind of taken over the Great Lakes, and it came actually at the end of the Cold War when the Black Sea opened up to trade with the Great Lakes, and these little spores of zebra mussels were dumped in the Great Lakes and have kind of completely changed the ecosystem of the lake. And I came across this sculpture that was the first work of Henry Moore's to be bought by an institution in North America, which is the warrior with shield, which is a kind of rather brutal image of a warrior with a severed limb. And Moore found a little pebble on a beach in England, which he often did, and used that as the starting point for this figure. And so this idea came that we could sort of throw that back into the water and then grow zebra mussels on it. So we made a steel version of the warrior, and he was submerged in Lake Ontario for 18 months and became host to a whole colony of these zebra mussels, and we pulled him out of the water and dried him out, and now he's sitting in a museum in the AGO in Toronto, next to all the original Moore sculptures. So it was a kind of nice. So so that interest in Moore evolved. Also, I mean, that's also the connection with these sort of Cold War stories in a way. This idea of Henry Moore as the first. I mean, he was really the first British artist to have a kind of global career, and you know, he was also rather sort of instrumentalized, as you say, as a figure within the, you know, the sort of the politics of the 20th century, and his work is found, you know, everywhere in the world pretty much, and so that struck me as having a quite interesting sort of sense in relation to my own sort of travels and how I try and sort of address local situations very much, and when I'm working, and it's a completely different approach to Moore, but there's a sort of echo in what he sort of, I don't know, pioneered, if you like. So yeah, it's been a rather rich kind of vein of research in a way that's led to a number of different projects. So yeah.